this morning. You're most welcome to this 10th Purposeful Aging session. Today, Saturday, the 25th of October, 2025. I'm sure there are a number of older adults, caregivers, and ladies and gentlemen. You are all most welcome. It's a bright and sunny morning today, and I hope you'll keep warm throughout, and that can help other members to hasten to join us. Yes, Purposeful Aging team is very excited to have this topic today. The topic is how to communicate effectively with caregivers. I'll just give a little background and then we'll invite the guest to come in. Glad to know that the guest is already with us. Its speaker is with us, so we are good to go. Now, the background is that during many, if not all the sessions Purposeful Aging team has carried out, the themes have been centered on the old adults and how they can live with intention. Each one of us needs care in one form or another, and the care may be provided by the family members, trained caregivers, and or the community where the individual resides. Purposeful Aging sessions encourage members to live and grow older with intention. By doing so, one can reduce the chances of needing care or depending on others for support. Mark you, it's a question of reducing. Ultimately, many do need the care and the support. Now, good communication is the foundation of quality care. It builds trust, reduces tension, and ensures that caregivers, clients, and families work together for the client's comfort and dignity. I want to emphasize the last few words is for the client's comfort and dignity. I'll now introduce our guest speaker this morning, and that is Miss Loy Kitamirike. She's going to take us through how to communicate effectively with caregivers. Loy is a retired social care worker. Loy is currently involved in advising in social care field across Uganda. And more interestingly, and on a personal basis, Loy engages or carries out mixed farming in Mityana, and that's where my interest is. We come from the same district. My next mission is to pay a visit to the farm, and so please watch out.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah,
I'll be waiting.
Which will come, the goodies which will come from Mityana. Always good things come from there. And a bit of housekeeping just before she comes in. Dear Loy, our esteemed speaker this morning, we have so far about 20 of us online, and that is adults and some caregivers. As you well know, many caregivers are usually young family members with no formal training in caregiving. Some lucky ones may have some degree of training like in nursing and sometimes in caregiving. Many of them stay with a client for 24 hours. And these many more listeners are eagerly waiting to hear from you. You have about 40 minutes to present, and then we shall break out into a question and answer session where many comments and examples are shared between you and the rest of the listeners. You kindly greet the people and you have the floor, dear Lloyd.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everyone. I've been introduced. My name is Loy. Morning. My name is Loy, and this is a subject to do with care is very close to my heart, and it's good today. I'll be able to share with you what I have learned along the way. First, I will define a carer, because sometimes the definition is muddled in what we do. What at the time we get to deciding that you need a caregiver, most people call them caregivers, you are at a point of need. And that need might be physical, might be you need help with household duties. It might be emotional support, mental, medical, companionship, safety issues might creep in, support with hospital, social visits, or just managing the care. So once you have a you have a caregiver, or you are a caregiver, because when we talk about communication, sometimes the communication is between the family and a non-family caregiver. So that communication between those two entities, or family to family, has to be streamlined in order to provide a good service to the person you are looking after, the cared for person. So when you get to that point of decision, you have to be very clear. Why do we need a caregiver? And then assess your circumstances, because you might be purchasing the caregiver or wanting to work out a plan within yourselves as a family. It might be the primary family or the extended family, or both. So either way, there has to be communication between the family and non-family caregivers. So depending on what the issue is, in terms of the situation of the person being cared for, then it will cascade into other problems. But you have to remember at each point, especially if the caregiver you're bringing in is non-family, that caregiver is not for the whole family. The purpose has to be focused onto the person being cared for. I think in Uganda, I'll generalize, in Uganda, we tend to have carers who do everything for everyone in the home state. And I think that the communication starts getting blurred at that point of entry if you don't have clear channels of communication or clear tasks to do. So that one, you have to start from there, making sure that you are clear about what the caregiver is going to do. So when the caregiver comes, you have to have prepared. No phone calls about, pick this person up from the taxi or bring them a border. They come and you're still at work and you haven't prepared anything. Definitely, that's a recipe for disaster. And that is on both sides, on the family side and the caregiver side, the non-family caregiver side. So you have to prepare for this person. And when I'm talking about preparation, you're talking about things like where that person is going to sleep, their space. You have to show them their space, where they're going to be their personal space. And then you have to plan their work. Once you know what they are going to do, you have to make sure that when they come in, you have to show them what their general duties will be. You have to have worked out a care plan for them. In the morning when they wake up, what do they do with the person being cared for? So you have a timetable across the whole day. Things will change because we are dealing with a human being. Things will change, but there has to be a general plan for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, because sometimes there might be things like visitors or hospital visits. So that means that day to day, things might not be the same. You have to know who makes the meals, who does the laundry. Is it the caregiver or not? So if the caregiver is the one doing the laundry, it's for the person, for the cared for only, not for everybody, mommy, daddy, children. No. That will not be possible for that one caregiver. And that's what I see. I'm in the field often. So what I see is that non-streamlining of duties and non-preparation. So actually the care is all over the place, and therefore the communication breaks down or is not there because that care is not focused. They're trying to cook the food and they're trying to take this person to the toilet. So that is blood. If they are preparing food for just one person, that is possible to plan your work. But if it is for the whole family, it is not possible. And so you, the family, have to make sure that when the caregiver comes, these things are done before. There are plans in place to make sure that the work is made easier, the physical work, so that they can focus more on supporting the cared for person. So in that case, us as family, we have work to do before the caregiver comes in. And the more you prepare, I think the better service you will get, because when you prepare, that means when the caregiver comes, what they see will tell a lot about you. So when I come and everything is prepared, I know, this person, I have to style up as well to make sure that I deliver at a higher level. So that is very important. You have to also make sure these are in things you have to remember when your relationship is starting, that a carer needs, a caregiver or a carer needs a break. We forget that completely generally. And we work our people 18 hours, 24 hours, and then we get upset when things don't work out. But initially, you have to plan for times when they need a break, when they stop. The stopping might mean that it is the family taking over. So your plan has to make sure it has both. Or it might be another, maybe non-family carer taking over. So you have to plan for that as well. That this person stops here, this person stops here. But when they come, you have to make sure that there is a handover between the two, whether it's family or non-family, so that one person, once they break off and go to rest, you are not communicating with half asleep people, trying to find out what went on during the day or during the night. So you need to make sure that your carer has a break, because your carer is a person as well with their needs as well, just as you have. They need proper nutrition, they need proper breaks to rest, they need a social life in order to be effective in your home. So those preparations have to be done before they come. When you are recruiting, preparing for them to come, you also need to look at the level of person you want. Because sometimes when we recruit people, we have issues like language. Are we going to be able to communicate effectively? Can they read? Can they write? Can they use the phone? You have to be able to communicate with them, and you have to be able to show them things. We have lots of gadgets these days. You know, you could be using, say, you could be non-residential. The family is not resident in that home, and you are using video calls. Can your carer use that to show you what is going on, or to communicate with them, or to communicate with the person being cared for? All these, you need to know that the person you are bringing in has the capacity to learn or to use whatever you expect them to use. You don't expect them to come be able to use a microwave when they've never seen it before. To use an iron. Irons come in different styles. And you expect them to iron the clothes of your cared for person. You need to take time to show them the tasks so that they can do them better. So you as an employer or as a member of the family, you have to take time to show them so that they are comfortable in the work they are doing. And you have to take time, more scrutiny when you are recruiting, to make sure that whoever comes in is able to do what you want them to do. If you don't do the initial bits, then definitely communication is going to break down. It won't happen, and it won't happen from the word go. You have to prepare for them, and maybe as time goes on, things will get better. You also have to have a way of communicating with your caregivers. or planning with your caregivers from day to day, in order to make your work easier. For example, you can say, today we are staying home, but tomorrow we are going to the doctors, or we go to the doctors every week on Wednesday. So make sure that your carer is able to use simple things like a calendar, like a report book, like they understand maybe small things like to-do lists, what they need when you're going out, or they're going out with a cared for person, who to contact. You have a contact list of the people you need throughout your work time. For example, a border person, your doctor, ambulance, or special hire car that helps you. Who is the main contact person of the home? Because a caregiver can't be contacting everybody in the home. Maybe you have 5 children. You will have to work out who is the first point of contact and who does what in the homes. So it becomes easier for the caregiver to communicate with the family. If it's to do with the medical, maybe you're going to call Christine. If it's to do with the plumbing has broken down, maybe you call Peter. So that helps the caregiver to focus on to who to contact, especially if they are attending to somebody and there are no family members around. You have to prepare for the caregivers to come, and how you're going to transfer information across. I don't know if I'm being clear. Any questions? Maybe they'll help me.
Does anyone have any point you want to clarify at this point?
At this point?
Or can actually use the chat box and jot it down? So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay. So I'll move on. The first main point is to prepare for the caregiver in whatever capacity. In recruiting, you don't just recruit anybody. You have to know what you're looking for and focus on that. And then you have to do the domestic side. So when we are communicating that with the caregivers, what should we do? It's like the do's and don'ts with the caregivers. I feel when you are with a caregiver, there are some things they are human beings, so you want to, and they're human beings in a social setting, so you want that respect transferred to them. What you want for yourself, you have to show to them as well. Do not criticize in front of an audience. They could have done something wrong and they are on your patch, but you have to respect them. And maybe if you want to criticize, you have to do the needful, pull them onto one side, say what you want to say, and with respect, and due attention. Sometimes we are busy people and we are communicating with too many people at the same time. But if you want clarity with caregivers, because their job is very specific, you have to give them that attention. You don't do things when you are divided, give them time, or wait till you have time. We have situations, I've seen situations, for example, where the family is in the house as well, but they do not care about the carer. All they want is the person they are looking after, all is done. But when the carer has a problem, for example, there might be a plumbing problem, no hot water. Usually there is hot water. But when they come to tell you, but we don't have hot water, maybe in the bathrooms, then you don't want to listen as a member of the family. You have to be in that position to recognize that they are facing problems too, or they need help with a certain aspect. For example, they might have an issue which happens. I find this happens often. Maybe the cared for is not stable and they have a fall. When I was training, they would tell us, if you are not sure of the surrounding, you actually let that person, you let them fall gradually onto the floor, because you have to be aware that you can get injured as well. So at that point, if you go and call a family member, once you make sure the person is on the floor and safe, and you go and call a family member to come and help you, and you get the back end of their stick, then that is not good for both sides, the caregiver, the cared for, and the family members. Because this is a fluid situation, it will happen, or it might happen. All we need to do is at that point, is to recognize that both sides, we need help to help the cared for person. And then go through what happened, how it came about, and then have interventions to make sure that it does not happen again. And it might happen again. It might happen again. So how we communicate with the caregivers is important. You don't want a caregiver to be in a position to start telling you that I don't know how it happened, when they know exactly how it happened. But if they feel that they're scared of you, that they're always not right, then you start getting fake stories. So it is important that we make sure that the caregivers
Hello. Loy, are you still there? Okay.
We can't hear you.
You can hear me? No?
Now you're back. You seem to have lost you somehow.
Okay. Where did I stop? The family, you need to be, I think, positive. You need to be positive in your conversations around the cared for person and the caregiver. We need to be looking at the positive side all the time, because if it is negative, it will still rub off on the situation you're in. If for example, you say, the person we are looking after, she always throws away her medication in the bin, or she flushes them in the toilet, then when the carer forgets to give the medication, she would just say, the cared for flushed it in the toilet. I did give it. So you have to be, the conversation needs to be positive in that you might say, in what you say, you might say, maybe let's wait for 5 minutes and then you'll take the medication. We'll try again later. But if you keep having this conversation that this person throws away that thing in the toilet, then it will continue happening. And even when it's not the cared for doing it, that will be an excuse that will be like written. It will happen. I had, I'll give an example. I had a lady we used to look after. She's passed now. But for her, she used to wrap her medication in tissue when serviettes, when they bring the food for her and the medication, she would wrap it in serviettes, and then when she goes to the toilet, she would flush it. So as a carer, you would think that actually she's had that medication and she hasn't. So when the medical situation changes, you think this person has been having the medication, but they have not been having the medication. And the carer thinks that they've been giving the medication, they've been administering. Actually, they haven't seen the person pop the tablets in their mouth. But even if they pop them in their mouth, I've seen cases where they keep them under the tongue until the carer has walked out and they'll spit them. So if you're a carer and part of your role is to give medication, make sure they take that medication, give lots of water, make sure that, the tablets have gone. For example, if they are tablets, make sure they have gone. Or if it's for drinking, make sure that they drink it. But don't be around that person and keep saying, you don't take your medication, you don't, those negative don't have positive results. You have to make sure that the communication remains positive, particularly around the carer and around issues that are not so nice. For example, if they had an accident, maybe they were not able to get to the toilet in time or things like that. It is not conversation for the living room. Just know where you have your conversations or where such problems are sorted. If you say this is happening, this person doesn't seem to be holding anymore, what do we do? Make sure you sit down seriously with the family and try and solve that problem without making sure that it is a conversation for the whole village. No. Yeah. Yes, and I see this happens all the time. Even up to, for example, Christine was talking about dignity. You have to train the caregivers to make sure that the dignity remains for the cared for person. I tell people that we very quickly say this person needs to use diapers. And we go to the pharmacy and buy the diapers. But we never plan for disposal. So if your person is using diapers, how are you disposing them? These are things we find on the street, and they'll know very quickly that those diapers come from Loy's house. And so what about dignity? When you're finding the diapers in the middle of the road, a whole bag of them in the street. So as you plan to make sure that dignity is enforced, make sure it is done all the way. From the house right to proper disposal. that you find. And this goes down even to things like injections for, what do they call the sharps? How do you dispose them?
The needle.
Yeah, the needle. Because we have so many now in our homes.
Mm.
But how do we dispose of them? Because whatever the family is doing, that is what the caregiver is going to do. So you have to be emphasizing some things, because it's very easy to have somebody, say, for example, who is incontinent of, say, urine. And the moment I walk in through the door, I will know that there's this issue here. So whose problem is it? Is it the caregiver? Is it the family? Is it? So as family, we need to make sure that we know what we want and we can do what we want. And we are employing the caregiver probably because we don't have the time, or barrier. There's a barrier there, for example, in genders, in our social structures. And you cannot, maybe a girl cannot be doing personal hygiene for a father, things like that. But you make sure that at least, even though the girl can't do, but you still know what you want the outcome to be. So you need to make sure that there's proper provision in order for the caregiver to provide a good service. So when things go wrong, your communication has to be, goes right back to the planning. For example, if it's an incontinence situation, that means the caregiver has to be told that this person is incontinent, and you have to plan in terms of laundry. When is it done? Who does it? How is it done? And then write down, if you go backwards, write down to the shopping list, when do we buy these things, to make sure that we don't run out. Because when we run out, the caregiver won't be able to perform well. So you as the family, a lot is carried by us as family members to make sure that the caregiver does a good job. We cannot just put things out for the caregiver. And in those terms, where we our community, we want to make sure that the caregiver does a good job. Here, I think in Uganda, we've got things, we are picking up things very quickly, but some things are not done well. For example, we don't know whether we need, sometimes for our care, for whether we need a nurse or a caregiver, and they are not the same. A nurse may be able to do that, what a caregiver does, but a caregiver won't be able to do what a nurse does. I know of situations, and this is quite often, I think, common, where people, especially people who have a bit higher disposable income, where they employ nurses. And once the nurse is in the home, they'll tell you they don't do laundry, they don't do housework, they don't do, for them, they just do their nursing job. They're as though they're in a hospital, giving medication, bandages, and things like that. So when your cared for is soiled, they will wrap it up and leave it there for somebody else to tend to. So you need to know, actually, who do you want? Maybe you want one nurse and one carer. Or maybe you need two carers. Or maybe you need a nurse who just comes maybe in the morning to do what they need to do, maybe give medication in the morning and in the evening. And they just stop by, do that job and go. But the rest, the carer can handle. So the assessment in the beginning will tell you what you need, because what you're going to communicate with the nurse is not the same with what you're going to communicate with a caregiver. Because the caregiver can do, as I told you in the beginning, the caregiver will do a little bit of physical, household, medical support, emotional support, companionship, ensure safety, make sure that your person is comfortable all the time, do hospital escorts, and manage some of the care plans, but the nurse won't be able to do all that for you. The nurse is a bit higher than the caregiver, or their tasks are quite specific. So you need to know, who do you want? You know, because I might be wanting maybe to take a walk with my cared for person down the road and have a nice meal at the restaurant down the road. But that you don't need a nurse to do. But sometimes we employ nurses to do that. So the nurse might tell you, for me, I'm not going to the restaurant. You know, so we need to be very, very, very specific at the beginning. Who do you want? A caregiver or a nurse? And then what tasks do you need to be done in your home or your cared for home? Once you know that, the abilities, the disabilities, what you're looking at, inability to do daily tasks, is that what the caregiver is coming to do? They're coming to do emotional support, or a mixture. You need to write it down in order to employ the right person, in order for you to effect good communication to the caregiver. Because if you don't know what they're coming to do, then you won't be able to do that. Let me move on a little bit I would also like to talk about what on the side of the caregiver. Many times as caregivers, we forget that we also have our side to look after. For example, as a caregiver from within the family, we forget. Let me give an example. Recently, I was dealing with a caregiver who's not resident, but is the primary caregiver. They've got 5 other siblings, and they're looking after an elderly mother. But this one person, the primary one, has a big burden, and the others just stop by. They just come to say, hello, mommy, how are you? And then off they go. Hello, mommy, off they go. So there was an intervention, and we needed to look at what everybody was doing. So we had to divide the days of the week and the tasks so that everybody does something. And if you couldn't, then what are we going to do? So we had to look at it that way. So that now that they were 5, there had to be a way in which A communicates with B, communicates with C, in order to make sure that mom is looked after well. So in their case, everybody was given a day that you look after mom for that day. On Monday, it is you, Loy. On Tuesday, it's you, Peter. On Wednesday, it's James, like that. And then there were teething problems, but gradually people started to make sure that they participate in the welfare of their mother, not just the one person. But in order to make sure that all that worked well, the communication had to be good. Right from personal care, to feeding, to outings, the social side of things, to bedtime, to inside the family dynamics had to be right, and the domestics had to be right. But then you needed to make sure that whoever was holding the fort, there was a means. So what we decided in their case, the reading and writing was important. A lot of it was IT based. So WhatsApp messages were involved, and then there had to be a log within the property, so that if somebody came tomorrow, they can know what happened yesterday or day before. How has mom been? How have they been feeling? So that communication was important. So it goes back to where I was telling you that when recruiting, do you need somebody who can read and write? Because when somebody's calling you all the time, you can imagine if you're a family member and you have to work, and the carer in the home is having to call you all the time. We forgot to buy soap. Oh, this person needs to go to hospital. Oh, the cab driver hasn't showed up. What do I do? Oh, we don't have any money. So you need to make sure that all those bits are tied up to make sure that the caregiver does their job and the family member does their job. Because by the time you decide to get a caregiver, you need some space as a person. You also probably have your own family, and you need that side to be working. You don't want the constant phone calls from this side. And from this side, you want, when you're away from your family, you want to be able to look after your mother without the other side bothering you. So that bit needs to be streamlined. You want whoever is at the base, that I need to run my job very well, so that when my sibling comes tomorrow, they're not be ringing me, telling me where there's no bread today, or there's no sugar, mom has no soap, or whatever. You want to be able to come, and all those things have been taken care of as they should be, as planned. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. So the caregiver should remember to communicate well with the family through means that have been provided by the family. If it is the phone, the family needs to make sure there is charge, and there's what do they call it, airtime or data, to make sure that is going to happen. If the caregiver is having to communicate with the client, who's the elderly person in this case, then you have to make sure we have to go back to things like dignity. Carers, we are known to despise unknowingly the cared for person. You treat them like nursery children. And these people are old people, like 80s, 70s, 90s, but they need to be treated in a dignified way. So you need to be talking to your patients, to your clients, to your customers in a dignified way. At whatever level, whether it's at a level of taking them to the bathroom or assisting them in a restaurant or at church, you need to be presenting yourself in a way that shows them that you are respecting them and they know that this person, this caregiver, respects me, because otherwise it will still trickle through in what they say or in the conversations with the family they have with the family, or in the way they respond to you, the caregiver. I, for example, I was a caregiver, family caregiver for my mother. But I remember very well, my mother had a stroke. She's passed on now. She had a stroke. And sometimes she used to use a walking stick. And she used to sit in the lounge with her walking stick beside her. But if she didn't like you, she would use the walking stick. And then at other times, there was somebody else would walk in, which she really liked. So you have to know these things around. You might say this elderly person can't do this, can't do that anymore, can't do that. But they will also use a weapon, or they'll use something they can access. They can throw a glass at you, or they can do anything. But you have to make sure that the way you handle them is dignified. You talk to them, you communicate with them in whatever means is available. For example, your person might be blind, your person can't hear, your person is not stable on their feet. You have to make sure you put that disability in your head. For example, if you want to somebody to go to the bedroom from the lounge, and that somebody can hear you but cannot see where they're going, then remember that you are their eyes, and they can hear you, but you are their eyes, so you need to support them. You can't say, go to the bedroom, and they are not supported. That is, don't forget why you are there. But even when you're doing that particular activity, you have to do it in a dignified way. Carers, we are known, don't follow it with abusive situation. They're saying, I told you long ago, but you haven't got up yet. That is why you have a job. That's why you're employed there. Therefore, you have to be communicating well with them, the patients or our customers or our clients. You have to be communicating well. And if it needs writing, some of our clients can read but can't hear. You need to write, they can read. So you need to be writing in time for them, for a task, or as part of the communication or social activity or whatever. But you need to be doing that, what they can understand, in a mode they can understand. For example, also these days we use a lot of phones, but maybe they need a higher volume. Make sure that you put a higher volume for them to talk to whoever they need to talk to. Maybe they need a video call. Maybe that will work for them as well. So you have to be communicating as caregivers to the clients in the right mode that is needed. Right mode, right tone, right volume is what we need, and the right attitude. Because you have to be kind. These people we look after don't crave or do not like the situations they find them in. Anybody doesn't like it. But you have to know that you have to be kind and tactical when talking to the client, the actual focus person, as well as when we're talking to the family. When talking to the family, you have to also be tactical. When talking to the family, you have to know who you're talking to, and when you're and what you want to talk to them about, and when. Because despite the fact that you're talking to family as a caregiver, in African situations, our families are huge. But you still need to focus. It's a discussion which you should have had when employment was starting. That's part of the preparation of the family member. Who is the caregiver going to communicate to, and on one particular subject? Because remember, the caregiver, you are there to protect, protect the client, and you have to promote everything about the client in terms of confidentiality, dignity, privacy. So when other family members come who are not the inner circle, you have to be a bit careful about what you say and who you say it to. That is a discussion with the primary family members. And where you say it, you have to know that these are surrounding money, I cannot discuss with so and so. You have to have planned that at the beginning of your service, that when I'm this issue, I have to communicate with so and so. And then also when, because I might be the primary family member, but maybe we don't have enough money today we don't have milk, and you ring me when I've just walked into the office at 8 in the morning. So we want to be, when we are communicating such things, that those petty things don't spoil the day for both sides, for the caregiver or for the primary family person. Those things should have been taken care of. And still, it all goes back down to planning. And what you agree is the way you will be communicating effectively. So I don't know if you have any questions for us, because I think it's time for question and answer. Christine?
Thank you so much, Loy. This has been very touching and very humbling, in fact. Thank you so much. I will start off by maybe trying to ask you to clarify, if I bring someone in who is a carer, not a qualified nurse, and we got our everything spelled out, but the cared for person's situation changes. Many times it changes, like when you come in June, the person is like this, he's able to walk, stagger to his room. But like in January, then the following year, the person falls down, and it's not the nurse, there's no nurse, or I'm just a caregiver. There's no nurse on duty. And you observe as a caregiver that the situation has changed. We've had instances where actually the caretaker just doesn't report things which have developed. What could be, how do you handle that situation? Because I don't want to imagine that they only do what you agreed or report what you agreed upon at the beginning. How do you handle that situation?
I think the work we are doing now, I encourage people to have a daily log of what has happened throughout the day. For example, you have a rundown. You can say today, Mom woke up in the morning. She enjoyed her bath. She had her medication. But from about 10 o'clock, her mood she hasn't been as happy as she normally is. And she went back to have a nap. And probably over time, you might recognize a change, even just from mood, from the mood of the person, that they are changing gradually. So you are encouraging the caregiver to report everything, to write down everything, so that when somebody else takes over, for example, when Christine, you come in to see your mother, you actually ask for the log and read what is going on. And then you can say, but when you see something serious has happened, please give me a call, because there are emergency situations. If somebody falls, don't write it in the book and say, Loy fell today, and then you leave it there. You encourage them to report certain things that are serious, like the fall. I would encourage, because you don't know what has happened. That's why we are encouraging these days for the carers to go for training. For example, health and safety training is actually, in other countries, it's mandatory for a caregiver to do. Because you will be faced with situations where these are common things, where somebody trips on a carpet and they fall and they break a hip. So what are you expecting that carer to do? They might be making the situation worse, because here you can see it even on the roadside. When somebody has an accident, they would lift this person, even shove them in that police pickup, and with broken bones. But it can happen even in the home.
Right.
Your mother breaks a hip, and they lift them onto a bed, because they know that when Christine comes and finds their mother on the floor, she's going to shout. And yet the floor might be the safest place. So that's why I was saying that the way you handle the carers to from when they come, you are encouraging them to give you as much information as possible about what is going on. Be it written. If it's a grave situation like that one, at least they give you a call. And then you can guide them on what to do. If they are not trained, you can say, leave them where they are. I'm on the way, or an ambulance is on the way, or whatever. Somebody's coming to help. But if you are very, very strict about your staff, they shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, then even something like that will happen and they won't say.
Okay, maybe to add a little on that, it's good for you to really establish a good relationship with the neighbors, because they do hear a lot, they observe a lot, they know when you come in. So you may even change tactics, that you talk to the neighbors, stop at the neighbors first and greet them. Then you go into your home, to your mother's place, because if you, for example, if you are in a, what we call muzigo, everything that happens in your muzigo, actually the neighbor knows. And if say the caregiver has taken an attitude towards you and won't say all that is happening, the neighbor is the next savior you have.
Yeah,
just
true.
Just to be aware that our lives are really community run, community based. It's good to know what your neighbor has heard, what your neighbor has seen about that patient. And you might find that your mother actually finds it easier to talk to the neighbor.
Very, very
to
true.
Tell the neighbor. Okay. I would like at this juncture to ask Dr. Philippa to take on the Q&A session. Dr.
All right.
Philippa.
Thank you very much. And thank you, speaker today, for a nicely put presentation. It's talked about things that are very pertinent, and yet we tend to overlook them, or maybe we expect too much, or probably sometimes we don't even know. I have some questions that came into my inbox, and then some which were general. We'll start with a question. Someone asked, do you sometimes find you have to convince someone that they need care in the first place? And should I read out, there are about 3 questions. Should I read them all out and then you answer at once? Would that be okay for you?
Okay. I think, yeah.
Okay. All right. And then the second question is, there's a dynamic sometimes between the older person being cared for and the caregiver, who's usually younger. What advice would you give in difficult situations? For example, when the caregiver is maybe advising the person they're caring for, or maybe a family member, and about something they've seen, or like how to handle the patient, but they are not being listened to, and yet it might actually be beneficial to the person they're caring for. And then secondly, the situations where the older person tells the carer not to tell the family members. For example, don't tell them I fell down. That was one question. Then the other one was, how do you handle communication between, or difficult situations of communication when family members are giving conflicting information to the caregiver? Yes, those are the questions we have. Over to you, Loy.
We'll start with the one about convincing care. What I can say about you, I think sometimes, especially if it is not that obvious, sometimes the care has to come in through the back door. What am I saying? I'm saying is that you don't have to tell the person that this person is coming to care for you. They might be as a companion, and they come in through that way, because you might find, especially if this person has dementia, then it will be very difficult when they decide that they don't need it, when they're still able to, they are still strong, but it's a mental situation. They say, I don't need care. Then when they say I don't need care, you start with a fight. And resolving that will be difficult. But when you see that they are difficult to convince, then you might have to think about a backdoor way of bringing it in. Either somebody coming to visit them gradually, maybe a few hours at a time, every day or once a week, and it creeps in slowly. Maybe then you say, I'll stay the night, or then the person being cared for might actually say, can you stay today, or are you coming back tomorrow? Then it would be good that way. But sometimes it is very difficult to convince a person that they need care, and it comes in just on the face of it. I remember looking after somebody in Mutune who didn't like care and didn't accept it. But what they did, the children did actually, is put support. A guy came in disguise of a gardener and used to stay in the quarters at the back, just to make sure that this person was safe. And they'll check on them every morning during the day. Muzei, how are you? Are you okay? Like that. And it crept in that way until they were able to get into the house and stay with them. So that might be done that way. And then advising the carer, advising the family. It depends, and also it is important that the family have to recognize that this person, the caregiver, is the person spending many hours with their loved one. That is what I said in the beginning about the family have to recognize the services of this care. Because if the carer wasn't there, and then the family have to step in and make sure that you do what the carer does in order to see what the problem is. And sometimes you are not able to do that. We have had sessions here about, we've had a support group for carers. And actually the caregivers who are hired, one of them said, can we have a session like this for the family members? Because sometimes they are difficult to tell what we are facing. So as family, you have to be receptive or willing to dig a little to make sure that what the carer is telling you is right. But you have also to remember that the carer is the person spending time, most of the time, with your cared for person. So you have to be very careful there. As I was telling you, the carer might tell you that this person is not taking their medication. And when the family comes in, the old person will say, I take medication every day. So who are you going to listen to? You have to be very careful there where you draw the line, because if the sentiments go to your loved one and you think no wrong can come from them, then there will be issues there. You have to trust each other, and you have to trust that they're telling you the truth. And then what was the last one? Communication between the family and...
There was one attached to the one you just answered, where the carer, the person being cared for, tells the carer not to tell the family members, for example, that I failed today. And then the last question was if there's different communication coming in from different family members, all coming to the caregiver, how the caregiver can handle that situation.
The first one about the elderly person refusing the carer to pass on information, I think we have to work in the interest of the old person. So still you have to remember, why are you there? For the safety of this person, the security of this person, well-being of this person. And what she's telling you, or he is telling you not to disclose, is against all that. You have to disclose, because at the end of the day, if you don't, it will go against the caregiver, and as not being able to do their work. I remember when I was still working. I worked in Europe for quite some time, but we had to disclose gifts given to us by the clients. If they gave you a bit of money, because a day will come and they'll say that you stole it. So however good it will be, you still, when you're writing your report for that day, you write that she did give me 10,000 today, and I've put it in the safe in the kitchen. You don't take it with you. It's the same as the information. You don't take it with you. Because if they fell and they've broken a bone, you go to hospital and the doctor says this broken bone did not happen today. It's old. So as a carer, what are you going to say? That the cared for refuse that I mention it? So I think you should disclose. You might not go to the old person and say, I have told them. No, but tell them anyway. But tell them she said that I should not tell you. So they'll know how to handle that discreetly. I don't know whether we agree with each other. And then communication between family members. That's why I said at the beginning that lines of communication have to be very clear, because communicating interfamily is not your role. Recently, I had somebody who recognized that their parent needed a carer, but then the other siblings, some of them thought that she needed a carer, others thought that she didn't need a carer. And those who thought she needed a carer couldn't put in a carer because the others thought that she didn't need a carer. But then there was nobody there to sit there and watch it all. So as family members, you need to sit together and agree which way you're going to go. Because in cases like for older people, you also need to look at their other things, their age, how they are communicating. Can they still cook? Can they give themselves medication? How are they socializing? You know, you need to look at a bigger spectrum, maybe not just the medication, but can other things go on around them when you're deciding as a family for whatever aspect. You need to agree. Maybe a bit of democracy. If you are 5, maybe you vote 3-2 and you move on. But the conflict between family members does not help the person being cared for. It does not, unless one family member stands and says, I'll look after this person. But especially if you are absent, I would encourage that the family members, there needs to be a consensus or a willingness to try an intervention if there's an issue prevailing. They need to agree on something. Otherwise, the person being cared for will be left in limbo.
Thank you very much. That was all the questions in the chat. Does anyone of our participants have a question and would like to voice over? I don't see any hands up. Anyone? Going one? Yes, Naomi. You can unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. This was really awakening some of the things that we really take for granted. So it was really good. Now, this is probably maybe just an observation, some experience I wanted to share related to what we've just had. In some cases, the carers do certain things that we need to clearly monitor. As she had said, I was caring for a patient. I mean, they could still talk and so on, though they were critically ill. And what would happen is that the nurse we had got to care for her, whenever would not be there, she would go away from the bedroom or near the room next to the bedroom where she would usually sit, go a bit far and go to make phone calls, always busy on phones until the patient herself complained. He said at times I call, she doesn't respond. And then, of course, there were other workers in the home, and the workers would tell her, I said, she's always on the phone when you call. Then she comes running. What was it? What was it? So when the patient told us we needed to speak with this girl, because we had talked to her before and said, these are your responsibilities. And we had said, give us a report, a daily report. And we had agreed with the people who gave us that nurse. They had their own structure. We also added in and we had agreed. This is the daily report, weekly report. And she would not put some of those things, the concerns the patient had. So we knew that with this sort of person, we needed to do closer monitoring. So we started asking somebody to be around, just walk in and check and find out what is happening. So some of those things, when you are working, become a challenge. And the question is, should I ask the other workers in the home? Like if I use the word to spy on this nurse or whoever is caring to see what is happening. So we need kind of a 360-degree kind of feedback to know what is going on. So it is very important to speak to the patient and find out what they feel about the carer, though it can also be taken with care. Because if they don't want to be cared for or they hate the person, it can also backfire. But as adults, we should weigh the situation and say, if the patient is complaining about this and this, is it actually happening, or because they don't want this person around them anyway? So it can be the other way around. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that input, Naomi. Any other person who would like to speak or ask a question before I hand back to the moderator? I don't see any hands up and nothing new in the chat, so I'll hand back to you so that we can close soon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Philippa, for that moderation. Yeah, and I want to thank you, Loy, once again for the heart-to-heart talk. I've attempted summarizing this situation like this, like strong communication turns care into connection, where dignity, respect, and compassion come first.
Yeah.
Clear, compassionate, and consistent communication is the cornerstone of quality caregiving. Whether you are at home, whether you are in the hospital, or just community setting, effective communication ensures that the person receiving care is understood, respected, and supported. While caregivers themselves feel valued and guided. It bridges the gap between professional responsibilities and human connection, promoting trust, teamwork, and better health outcomes. For families and care professions alike, learning how to communicate well with the caregivers means fostering open dialogue, active listening, and empathy. Most of the time, empathy is never there. We never put ourselves in the feet of the caregivers. It involves sharing accurate information, expressing appreciation, and addressing concerns early, and maintaining a respectful tone even under pressure. And strong communication not only improves day-to-day care, but also reduces stress, misunderstanding, and burnout. That's thus creating a more compassionate and coordinated care environment for everyone involved. This topic is really a concern for all of us, and I think, Loy, you've done a very good job. We are very, very grateful as Purposeful Aging because it rounds up everything we've tried to do in the whole year. Yes, thank you so much once again. Now, as usual, I would like to remind our listeners that we do have a recorded session. It comes out usually about 5-6 days after today. And it is something I think worth sharing with those you love and those you care for, so that we all get that ideal situation. And also, all the sessions which have happened since 2022 are available on YouTube. So please do check in and you get the sessions.
Okay.
Then we shall have our last session this year on the 29th of November. Usually December, we leave you to enjoy your families. But this session is going to be physical, and we would like to have, if possible, many people who are cared for and those who take care of those elderly people, older adults, to come and have an outing, socialize. You never know whom you meet. And this is going to take place at Namalere. This is very near Kawanda. It's about 1.5 kilometers from Kawanda. If any of you is interested or has an older adult you would like to take out for once in a year, please get in touch with any member of the Purposeful Aging so that we give you more details and work towards a beautiful day out for all of us. The place is full of trees, full of, fresh air. It's in Kawanda, but it's like in the village. So it will be very good for the older adults who have been in 4 wars for the whole year. So please get in touch. We hope to work with other people like Rotary and the locals of Kawanda and Namalire. So please get in touch and have this physical session. Hopefully a bit of hybrid might come in, you never know, on the 29th of November. Other than that, I want to wish you a very good weekend, and please give a thunderous clap to our guest speaker this morning. And thank you so much for coming, and do come again. May you have a good weekend. Bye-bye.